Hey artists! Welcome to another tutorial. Today we're going to be learning how to paint a majestic howling wolf. We even have a little bit of that, steamy breath coming out as if he was howling on a cold night. Let's jump in. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be painting with oil paints, but you can definitely get the same effect with acrylics. I highly recommend using a slow drying medium with your acrylics to extend that drying time and to make sure that your painting process is as easy as possible. I painted exclusively with acrylics for years and got these same effects, so I know you can too. There's a list of colors that I used here on the screen. Now, if you're craving more help and want the full real-time tutorial complete with my voice walking you through every single moment, paint mixing recipes, reference photos, and more, I think you will love the Wildlife Painting Academy. New tutorials are added each month, and it truly is your secret weapon for learning how to paint realistic wildlife easily. You can check it out in the description of this video. So I start off my painting by mapping out the darkest parts here. Here I'm working with the largest brush possible, one of my favorite filberts, and I'm going in with ivory black. So I'm just basically fleshing out my sketch a little bit, putting in those darkest areas. I wanted this wolf to really pop, so I'm going with a really nice solid dark background here that's really going to add a nice contrast level so we can focus nicely on our wolf. So now that I have my darkest parts of my painting sort of mapped out, I know where everything is going to go, I'm going to start to go in with some medium toned brownish gray. So this is going to be a combination of ivory black, titanium white, and burnt umber. Still working with a really large brush here. This is going to allow me to cover more area more quickly, but it's also going to prevent me from jumping into detail too quickly. So now that I've got that, medium tone brownish gray mapped out, I'm gonna start to move into my lighter shades. So here I'm adding more titanium white. You can see it's brighter. And I'm gonna start to flesh out that next lightest part. So here you'll notice I'm definitely not paying attention to any detail at this phase. We just wanna make a nice solid underpainting, and then the detail comes later. I like to stick with the largest possible brush for all of these areas. Like I said before, it keeps me from jumping into detail too quickly. It also allows me to work faster, but if you find that working with a really large brush in certain areas, especially when you're getting like around the face, around the ears, and if it's just too overwhelming, feel free to grab a smaller brush. This wolf has some really nice rusty colored fur in a couple of areas like behind the ear and a little bit on the neck. So I'm gonna go and pop that in. So now I'm going in with my next lightest shade. It's subtle here, but there is a difference. So I added more titanium white, and I wanted there to be a little bit of backlighting here so that we can see those, the fur coming off the wolf is nicely lit up. I grabbed a smaller brush here just so I can pop in that eye. It's a pretty small, tight area, and the same thing with the nose. So now that the underpainting is complete, it's time to start jumping into some detail. So we're going to be building it up slowly. I'm still working with a pretty large brush here. It's a filbert brush, my favorite shape of all time, and I'm going in with some lighter paint here. So there's definitely more titanium white added here. And basically I'm using my brush strokes to start to build up that fur texture. You want to make sure you're keeping a very close eye on your reference photo to make sure that you are paying attention to the direction that the fur flows in, but also the texture and the shape of that fur. whether there's flow happening, if it's super straight, maybe, it's a little crimped. All of those are really important features of fur. The length of the fur really matters. So for instance, here when we're working on the face, you want to make sure that your brush strokes are a lot shorter than they would be on the neck. Now I'm going through with some dark paint here, mostly burnt umber, and I'm just going to start to carve out some of those nice fur chunks that are happening. So the fur was getting a little too pale for my liking. I lost a lot of those shadows when I was adding that detail. So I'm gonna go in here with burnt umber and some titanium black, and I'm gonna start to carve out more of those shadows in the fur. Here I'm working with a medium-ish filbert brush. It's a very versatile brush. You can cover a lot of distance on the broad side of the brush, and you can also turn it on its side to get some detail. So now that my shadows are in place again, I'm gonna go with a lighter paint here, so adding a lot more titanium white, and I'm gonna start to then carve out the highlighted portion. So this is gonna give our fur a really nice 3D structure because fur is layered. So we're gonna see those shadows, we're gonna see the shadows under the different layers of hair, but also where that hair is gonna clump together. That is going to create some shadows too, and we want to make sure that we are doing our best to paint those in because that is something that makes fur look realistic. Now I'm using a smaller detail brush here, and I'm popping in a few of the dark markings that are found on this wolf here. So I'm using ivory black into that wet paint to just kind of, reestablish some of those markings and that really dark fur. Now I'm going in with a small round brush here, and I am placing down some strategic details in this fur. So I'm using brush strokes that are matching the length of the fur. Again, always paying attention to the direction that the fur flows in, just building up that nice tight detail. So I put my painting aside for a few days until it was completely dry, and now I'm going in with a glaze layer. With this glaze, I'm adding some nice color. I'm also going to be deepening those shadows to really pull out that 3D shape of our wolf. I wanted to add more of that beautiful rusty colored fur behind the ear and a little bit on the neck and the face, so through glazing, I'm able to do that really easily. So now into my wet glaze layer. This is where I like to work in my final layer of highlights and details. I like to work it into that wet glaze layer so it's a little more transparent, a little more diffuse, a little more natural. So go in with your smallest brush that you have and add those details. I wanted to go in and add one final touch. I'm adding that steamy breath. So here I'm just basically grabbing a large soft brush and I am using it to dry brush some titanium white onto my background to show that nice steamy breath. And we're done! Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial on how to paint a realistic howling wolf with paint. I hope you can use what you learned here to create a beautiful painting of your own. Now, the full real-time tutorial with my voice walking you through every moment can be found inside the Wildlife Painting Academy. There's a link in the description of this video. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Please hit that big, beautiful subscribe button if you want to keep learning how to paint realistic wildlife easily. If there are any animals that you want to learn how to paint, leave me a comment and I will add it to the list. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.